Hello, guys, and welcome to today's podcast. This is Tech, your podcaster. Essentially, today I'm going to be making the podcast that I promised a while ago, and I just haven't gotten around to it because I'm freaking crazy busy. And that's how to set up a corporation and everything you really need to know in order to get one to operate properly. This is going to be talking from years of experience and personally leading a corporation and building a megacorp. I don't know all the possible variations of corporations that exists, of course. I am familiar a little bit with BSO, but I also want to put the disclaimer that I don't know exactly how they're set up. So if anyone from BSO watches this, you can comment down below and let me know what you guys do different, and let me know if I got everything right or if I got some things wrong. That's fine. And the reason I use BSO is because it's such an easy comparison in terms of fundamental setup compared to UIH that they are a very easy point of reference to look at. Not to mention they're the biggest corp in the game, I think, at this point. I think they have like 20 corps or something like that. We only have half of that, so whatever. They clearly did the work. I'm not gonna take points off or anything for that. A lot of people think that they cheat and do this, especially with the Red Star events. Unfortunately, I'm going to go through this, right? After I educate you on all the basic stuff that you need, I'm going to go through some of the limitations of the game that really makes it easy for them to do what they're doing. I don't necessarily like it, but I don't necessarily fault them for doing it because you can do it. And unfortunately, the way the system is set up, that's just how it is. That's the best way to do it. But anyway, we'll go over that later. So the first thing you need to know is we're going to go through some basics. So what do you need, right? You need a Discord server. You need a corporation if you're a brand new player. You need to reach the minimums. I think it's level 5 and 20,000 credits is what you need in order to build one. I could be wrong. It might be a little bit less than that in terms of credits. But it's a very small amount of resources needed to build one. The next thing you need, again, Discord server. Build a Discord server. Every single corporation that I know of that it's actually existing and not dying. Well, there's ones that are dying that have Discord servers, but the vast majority of corporations, period, just have a Discord server. Nowadays, it's definitely making a mandatory thing to have them on Discord. This is mainly because the game is so limited in its ability to monitor people. For example, you can't DM people. You can't look at a history of conversations you've had with these people or what they've said in the past or that kind of thing. It just makes it very tricky to manage people because the game is just so limiting. You don't even have a friends list. So that's the main reason you want a Discord server. Because then what happens is a lot of the time you'll find that you'll have to DM people for various reasons. A lot of it has to do with an activity, which I'll go over. So here's the thing. Regarding an activity, I would make it a strict rule to, keep that in forever. At the very beginning, you could be very strict about it because you want to sift through all the people who don't have any interest in the game. Because I'm assuming here, so my model has been in UIH to build a corp from scratch and to get new players into it because that's the pool of most available players. If you go into the higher end where you're starting to get RS6, RS7, RS8 and higher, it gets harder and harder and harder to find recruits at those higher levels. It becomes very, very difficult because a lot of those people already have corporations at that point and they're tied to them. For various reasons, they may not want to leave even if it's dying, and you could do mergers, but those have their own complications, for example, cultures and so forth, corp cultures. So there's a lot that goes into all these things, but yes, definitely have a Discord. Something else, once you get your Discord set up, and by the way, you want to make sure you understand Discord. If you've never run a server before, get familiar with it, watch some tutorials on YouTube or even Discord's website. I think they have a bunch of stuff on there. And get familiar with everything because it's not crazy complicated, but at first it was a little overwhelming when I first started playing the game and setting up the Discord server and learning all the nuances. The main things you need to focus on are roles, channels, categories of channels, and permissions on the roles themselves and how the hierarchies work in the game, in the server, in terms of what's allowed and what thing. Basically, the higher the position or the role, the more power it has over the ones that are under it. Anything above it, it has no ability to do much with it, I think. It only has limited access to those things. I don't even think you can delete messages. I'm actually not completely sure because, I'm used to just being the top person. I have all the permissions on the server since I own it, so there's nothing that any particular member can do that I can't either see or delete or do whatever on the server. If you're the owner of the server, you can do basically everything. They added a feature where you can actually see the server from the perspective of a particular role, so that way you can verify settings that didn't used to exist. So that's really handy. Would definitely use that if you're trying to get familiar with everything. But anyway, beyond that, yeah, once you get those basics out of the way, you want to create a channel where you have your rules, and above the rules have a basic purpose. Every corporation needs a basic purpose. What is the basic purpose? It's whatever you decide the corporation is going to be. For UIH, it's essentially to become the best, friendliest kind of environment you can create, and to contribute to players of the corporation to the degree that they contribute back. We don't want freeloaders, basically. So if you're a freeloader, goodbye. We don't want you. That being said, that's our purpose. It's very broad, obviously. It's not a very precise purpose, and that's on purpose because... Oh, there you go. Purpose. That's done on purpose because I wanted to build a big corporation from the very beginning, and having a broad kind of thing there makes it very easy to fit a lot of things into it, like white stars, activity, all these different metrics, right? You don't have to go that broad. You could be more specific, like you want to make one of the best white star corps in the game or something, or whatever. Make a casual corp, but my advice is don't go for casual. Usually that doesn't end very well. A lot of corporations go casual, and some are fine. They have a tight-knit group, and others just don't survive very long. They just kind of collapse after a while, and these are the same guys who don't have a Discord server, who don't, it just doesn't work from what I've seen if you want a long-lasting corporation. My thing is, this whole point of this whole podcast is just to instruct you on how to make something succeed, and the things I've done personally to make that happen. So why do you want a basic purpose? The reason you want a basic purpose is because you want to have something to refer back to in the future. When you expand, which I'm assuming you're going to do because you're interested in watching this podcast, you're going to run into a situation at some point where someone has some idea, another person has another idea, and another person has another idea what direction they want to keep the corp going. So, assuming everybody reads this policy and they read the purpose, they have to some degree, acknowledge that they've at least read it and understand what the general point of the corp is, right? Well, sometimes that can get lost between all the discussions and conversations, and when you're feeling like you don't know where to take everything, you can always refer back to it, because then that becomes your stable piece of the stable principle that you guide everything by. So in my case, if I don't know, we wanted to become a hardcore White Star Corp, we could do that. That could be fit into our policy. That's why it's so broad, right? It's our purpose can be, if we had a bunch of players that just wanted to be hardcore White Star players, we can get them all together and make a whole almost a corp out of it, and that would be fine. But if it gets to the point where it's just like we're dragging people from different corps and it's destroying their environments and their cultures and that kind of thing, then that kind of goes against the basic purpose. So at that point, you might actually decide to slice that out and abandon that idea. Anyway, that's why it exists. Not to mention, if you don't have a purpose, what's the point? There's no point to it. Now we're gonna go. Now, assuming you have your basic rules, like some of the best ones is your activity rules, your what's expected, don't be an asshole, that kind of thing. Once you're done with all of that, you can go into basic recruitment. Now, this is assuming you're alone, by the way. I would just do this ahead of time, so that way you just have something structured. This isn't an excuse not to start recruitment, because this can be the most frustrating and intimidating part. And something to realize is, if you're going to undergo this process and to actually build a corp, do realize that the responsibility required for this is kind of high. Especially since technically there is nobody else to blame but yourself if something doesn't go right. I remember in the first days when I was first building UIH, it used to just be one corp. In fact, I'm not the original founder. I'm only the person who got the hand-me-down first officer title. And, at some point, the guy who original founder got tired. He quit. He just left. I had a handful of players with me. and we all just decided to, you know, keep the thing going, and I was eventually decided to be the leader. I assigned some people some things. It was a little easier in my case because I already had people there. I don't know what it's like for starting from complete scratch without anybody. I imagine it's similar to what I would find in a new corporation that I've built from scratch with some help. But recruitment is just going to have to be, you know, it's going to be, it's just the most intimidating and annoying part about everything. That's why I'm saying if you're going to start a corporation yourself, you should probably start with the lower level players, because it's also a very rewarding experience. I wish that the corporation sizes weren't so small, because then I could help a lot more players. But anyway, some methods you can use to recruit. So here's a few. And don't spam. Whatever you do, do not spam. Don't do that. You can use the Galaxy chat. You can post on there every 5 or so minutes, 10 minutes. That's the least reliable. It doesn't have great conversion rates, as they say in, you know, marketing. It doesn't have a great conversion rate. You can use Reddit, which I found to be very successful. And the biggest thing about Reddit is upvote the post. Have your core members or whoever you have, friends and so forth, just upvote the post. Because just having it higher on the list, if you don't know anything about SEO or search engine optimization, essentially the first listing on a search result page on Google gets the majority of the traffic, and the more you go down, you start to lose huge chunks of conversions. Like if you're second place, it's like something like 20 or 30%, and if you go lower and lower, then it's almost zero by the end of the page. So that's something to keep in mind. You want to be toward the top on Reddit, and I don't see anybody doing this. I haven't seen it in a while because I haven't been running the corp myself. I'm more like a grandpa at this point. I'm just kind of the old guy who knows all the things, and people just ask questions if they need anything. And yeah, but upvote the post, because being higher on that list makes a huge difference. We would always make it a point to upvote our listing in UIH so it could be the top one, because almost nobody ever competed with that. I think the only other people that would do that would be SFA and BSO. But even getting a second or third place position and seeing all those upvotes gives a really good impression to players that at least it's active, right? That there's some interest in this corp. So definitely make that a point. What else is there? There's Diplo stations. I didn't do this one personally. I had a friend do this who's no longer playing the game, but he used to just randomly invite people on Diplo and just ask them, hey, do you want to join a corporation? And he managed to get some people that way. So I was, you know, it clearly worked to some extent, but I wouldn't say that's a great bringer of people. There's also Red Stars, public Red Stars. You can go to, especially if like you're going for the lower level stuff, you can go to level 4s or level 3s or something like that. You don't want to go too low either. I guess you could. It doesn't really matter if you're starting from scratch. And then just help people and then ask them, hey, do you want to join a corporation? A lot of people won't say anything. I bet you a lot of those players are probably newer too, so they probably don't even know that there's a chat and then they can see what people are saying and this and that. So, you know, your mileage will vary. It's very labor intensive going out and recruiting. If you don't have a shitload of time and you really need to get this done, find somebody who does and who is willing to do it, because that will make a huge difference. And make sure this point is in. Something to keep in mind, make sure this is constantly in. Make sure that the recruitment posts are up every month on Reddit, every 2 days on the corporation Discord, which this is the other one I was forgetting. You want to post there every 2 days because that's the limit. And make a poster. I don't know. I don't think you can really insert a poster on Reddit. Not while also having text. I guess you could technically just put the thing, but then you can't put a link, so that's annoying. But make a poster at least for the Discord one, because that will make it attractive, make it interesting. If you're not good at it, I don't know, you could hire someone on Fiverr or just wing it. You can use Canva, you can use Spark on Adobe. You can use all sorts of software to make stuff like that, almost like a thumbnail. If you want to learn a little bit about that, you look up some. I remember what's his name. Well, actually, I always go back to Mr. Beast and PewDiePie. I think both of them made some tutorial, or I think Mr. Beast or Jimmy made a point of something like that when he was making his. Oh, actually, there's a YouTube channel that makes. I'll have to link about it down below. There's a YouTube video down that I'll link you guys. With some YouTuber, I forgot her name, something Wolf, I forgot her name, but Wolf Sniper, I think is her name. or handle, whatever you want to call it. And there was this YouTube channel that just broke down everything she was doing, and there was some really cool stuff in there. And I think that will be useful for you if you want to design a, like, essentially what you're doing is creating a huge thumbnail, but except that this is a poster. It's the same concept, same thing. You're just trying to attract attention. Attention is incredibly important. If you can attract that, if you can control that at will and control people's attention, you will be the most powerful person on the planet, especially if you can get a bunch of eyeballs all over the place looking at whatever you want them to look at. So I will link that somewhere down below into the description, and you guys can check that video out because I thought that was really interesting. Aside from that, yes, if you're not good at making posters, just make something. It's better than nothing because at least there's something there to put out. Eventually, once you get bigger, you should be able to find people who can do that for you. Or again, you could, if you have money and you don't care spending it, you could just hire someone on Fiverr or something to make something for you. But again, just put something. Even if you make it yourself, it could be the simplest thing. Just put something on there. Anyway, so that's being said and done. I think those are the real main ways. The other way you could technically recruit is by mergers. That's a lot harder to pull off when you're small, so you wouldn't do this anywhere near at the beginning. You would probably do this later on. Or actually, you might be able to do it at the beginning if there's smaller corps who are trying to build, but then they failed or something. It might actually be a lot easier. I don't have experience in this part, but it might be a lot easier to do it with newer corps because they haven't really developed a corp culture yet. Because that's one of the biggest things that you're going to run into later on. The corp culture is something that needs to be done right in terms of mergers, because if the two corps that are merging are completely different in terms of culture, they may not get along with each other. The members merging between the two, they may not get along. I've had some of this happen. It wasn't like entire swaths of members between the corps that would be, you know, not get along, but sometimes it was like leadership or other things, and it can get really messy. So if you're going to consider a merger, make sure that point is in, to make sure that the cultures are compatible. And how you can determine that is just by the feel of it, right? Hang out in each other's corps, see how you interact. Do you get pissed off at each other all the time by making certain comments, you know, that kind of thing. If that isn't really a thing, you know, and you think you guys would get along just fine, then go ahead and merge, you know. But that's just my warning to you because I've run into that. I've also had some amazing people come out of mergers, don't get me wrong. One of my bot admins, Growly, you know, guy's amazing. I got him from a merger, and he's freaking fantastic. He's done so much for the corp and that kind of thing. But you know, your mileage may vary. That's just what I'm trying to tell you. So that pretty much covers recruitment. All right, so here's where it gets a little bit more into the administration side. So when you're recruiting, ideally you should be getting quite a few people in every day. You could probably, when I was recruiting, when I was making new corps from scratch with the help of 2 other officers or something, we could get like 10 people a day at least, I think. I don't know how it is now. I assume it hasn't changed too much, especially if you're going for the lower level guys again. If you're going for the high level, there's no way you're getting 10 people a day. You're going to get probably closer to, if you get lucky, and depending on the level, if it's like RS7 or beyond that, you're lucky to get 1 every week or so, 1 every 2 weeks, because it's just so few of them to go around, unless you get lucky. It could have changed by now. I haven't tried it in a while, but from my experience, it's hell. But lower levels, you should be able to get 10 a day, at least, because there's a lot of players that are just coming into the game. They're trying it out. And the biggest thing is you want to... This is another piece of advice. I'm probably going to come up with things as we go along and talk through this, because things are just going to pop in my mind. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea to talk about. You want to have resources for them. If you're an experienced player, you want to help them as much as possible, make guides. You can even link some of my videos. Some corporations have done that. They would just link my videos in a channel, and then the people can refer back to that whenever, and, you know, answer their questions if they have questions about something, no matter how stupid it is, because we were all there at some point. We all didn't know what the hell we were doing. So, you know, answer their questions and make sure they get the help that they need, because that will really go a long way toward making sure that they fall in love with the game, like we all have, obviously. Because if you're making a corp, you must love the game, otherwise you wouldn't bother with this much effort. And then, yeah, you would have a member essentially forever, or unless they literally have a life event where they can no longer play the game. But that really reduces your turnover. And really care about your corp members, right? Go out and make sure they're doing okay. If you haven't seen them in a while, go out and, you know, DM them on Discord. see how they're doing, see what's going on, see if you can help them in some way. You know, just ask them, hey, what's up? You know, I noticed you weren't on for a while. Is there something I can help you with? Are you running into something? You know, that kind of thing. Or they just, most of the time it's a life thing. If that's the case, you know, whatever you do, you can do with that as you will. If they have to leave and they can no longer play or maintain the activity that's needed, then, you know, you politely tell them that, well, since, you know, you can't maintain the activity, you know, unfortunately we have to make that slot available for someone who can. But in the future, if you come back and you can maintain that, then that's fine. Just come back and we'll let you rejoin. And often what ends up happening too is a lot of people do come back. I've had that happen many times. And they rejoin for a while. Sometimes they leave again, but at least that's another form of recruitment. Ironically enough, that you get people who return to the game and they go back to you because you were the last corp they were with. So yeah, do that. Next thing is policy. So activity. Make sure that the activity is definitely in. At the beginning when you're building the corp, make it 3 days. Because if you're doing this on lower level peeps, they should be active pretty much every single day. Especially if they're really enjoying the game because it's brand new, it's a new experience, they want to do everything. You know, it's an economy building game, so you want to get as familiar with it as possible, as quickly as possible. So if people are absent for 3 days, that's more than likely means that they just dropped off, they're no longer interested. But realistically, you should always DM them, especially if they're on Discord. And again, if they don't show up on Discord, just boot them after like 10 days. Especially if you've messaged, like made it announcements multiple times, you know, let them know ahead of time that if they don't make it by such and such date, then you're going to boot them. Because yeah, Discord is not optional. It's definitely, it's a must. So okay, that basically covers activity. Oh, so yeah, regarding an activity, there's 2 ways to look at it. There's the star log, so this means you would have to go to the player system and click on their star and go on the star log. You could just see whether they jumped a ship in or not for the last ever so many days. You can also use it as an indicator whether they're starting to go inactive or not, because generally it should be filled with bunch of just a bunch of information about them jumping in ships or not, and out jumping ships to blah thing, right? Because they would be doing things daily. If it's just completely dead, then that's an indicator that players no longer are playing for whatever reason. And the other way is, which is less reliable, and this is why I don't prefer it, is the red dots and blue dots next to everyone's name on the corp roster. That basically measures whether the player has logged in or not. It doesn't measure whether they've actually played or not. That's why I prefer the star log. But again, just, you know, if you notice things like that, just feel free to reach out. Again, care about your members. Make sure that they know that you care, that you want them to do well in the game, and that they should have fun. That they should be having fun in the game, right? Oh my god, my throat is all dry. Anyway, yes. So now the next thing is, from those people that you're recruiting, you're going to get for officers. That's where your new officers are going to come by. And this is essentially what we would do every time we built a new corp in UIH. We would start up a new corp. I would actually have officers already, but I would bring them over from a different corp. And then we would just build it out from there. And then once what we would ideally want, and this happened really well the first several times we did it, we had a little bit more difficulty later on. But essentially, we would just get a bunch of people, and then we start sifting through them. Again, the inactivity policy, that's why it's so important, because you start to sift through all the garbage. Most of them are going to be people who turn over quickly, who don't like the game or whatever reason. You know, it wasn't their jam, so they left. And, you know, for the people that, again, always reach out. Always reach out before you kick them. Don't just automatically boot them. And if they don't respond, then you can't do anything else, so just boot them. But always reach out first. That's always been my rule of thumb. Now, assuming that, you know, that's all out of the way, that most of them are just going to be turnovers because they're just not interested in the game, or something else happened, or they don't have the time, or yada, 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 yada. When you're first recruiting, it's not that big of a deal. Especially, again, this is specifically if you're recruiting on the lower levels. The higher levels are a lot harder. So that's why my recommendation is, if you're first starting a corp, do the beginning levels, because those are much, much easier to set up. Because then if someone just goes inactive, you can replace them a lot quicker. Okay, so that being said, fine. So that's all done. Trying to see what else I can go over here. Yes, so you get your officers from them. Eventually, what's going to happen is you're going to notice some players are going to be really active and really like helpful and energetic and enthusiastic. Those are the guys you want to look for if you're looking for officers. All you really need to do in order to make an officer is just go ahead and ask them, hey, do you want to be an officer? I really could use some help. You seem really active, really helpful. That kind of thing. Do you think you want to do this, with me and build the corp together? Whatever the spiel is, right? You put your own twist on it, but that's the general gist. Would you like to be an officer, right? And contribute to the corp in that fashion. Yes, so that's essentially how you're going to find your officers most of the time. Someone's usually going to be willing to help you. Just don't make it an overbearing amount of work at the beginning, because obviously this is supposed to be a casual game. And some people obviously don't take it casually. They play it a lot harder than most. But, it's supposed to be relatively easy and non-committal in terms of how much you need to put into it to play it and enjoy it. Don't make it a chore, essentially, is what I'm trying to tell you. And it's not that difficult once you get people set up and everything's honky-dory, then it's fine. So ideally you would want 3 officers. You can make one, you could, delegate certain tasks to them. Like if one wants to run white stars, if another one wants to do such and such and such and such, you can do that. Ideally you want at least 2 white star commanders. In order to run white stars properly. You don't want to just have one commander, and you do not want to run casuals. In my experience, casuals have been a horrible disaster in terms of running white stars. The main reason is because what ends up happening is that there's nobody commanding them. There's nobody, no head to lead people, and it just turns into a hell of a. Yeah, no, don't do that. So let me see here. Yeah, so always have at least 2 commanders for that. You can make one of your officers a commander, and you do need it if you have a flagship at this point. If you have a flagship, you'll need a commander to, an officer to move the flagship and that kind of thing. So that's why that would also be ideal. Okay, so that's being said. Yes, people are going to leave you. That's another point. I'm just looking through my notes, sorry. People are going to leave you. Things happen in life. People have new things coming up. They lose interest in the game. I lost interest in the game a few times. Came back, whatever. But people are going to leave you. I've had it happen. I'm the only original guy left from when I founded UIH. Or not founded, I'm sorry, grew it up from the guys that were there with me. I'm the only one that remains that's the original crew. So yeah, I mean, I have like, 50 officers, a little under 200 members, yada 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 yada, but the original guys, they're all gone. And that's okay, it's gonna happen. People have things happen in their lives, things change, they just, they want to move on. So that's fine. But just realize that's going to happen, and always keep that in mind. And the higher the position of whatever is going to happen, and again, this is a lot simpler when you have one corp. When you start to go into megacorp territory, it starts to get ridiculously complicated and a lot harder. Essentially, here's a rule of thumb for organization and management. You don't want to put more than 5 people under one person who's in charge. Any more than that gets really crazy, but you can stack it like a pyramid almost. So you have 5 people under one person, then 5 of those people under someone else, and then 5 of those. So like, for example, I have COs, deputy COs, first officers, and officers. Yes. So there's 5 officers below every first officer, 5 first officers below every deputy commanding officer, and if we ever got crazy, there would be 5 deputy commanding officers under 1 commanding officer, and then there would be, if it gets crazy huge, you can go ahead and put 5 commanding officers under some other title that you can make up later or whatever, Commodore or whatever. There's a lot of ways to play, but don't put more than 5 people in charge of it. But as you can see, this multiplies, right? Because now you have 5 people in charge of one, and then you have 5 officers under 1 first officers, and you have 5 first officers under 1 other guy, 1 deputy commanding officer. So that would be like what? Assuming you take the first officers, 5 times 5, that's 25. If you have 5 deputy commanding officers, 5 times 25, that's 125, and it goes on and on and on. So it can get very big very quickly. This is the reason that I hate the current system, the way it's set up, because it's so freaking taxing on everybody. because the administration involved is so annoying. The way we set it up anyway. BSO, again, they have a system where it's almost like they're just one gigantic organism, and they just flow back and forth between all the different corps, which, I mean, I guess it works great. It was hell, from what I understand, to build that. So kudos to them for getting that to work, because my God, it's so chaotic, and a lot of people just don't like it, and I don't like hopping personally, but, you know, that's life in this game. And it's the limitation in our game, in our system in UIH, because unfortunately, this means that I have to have 5 officers in every single corp, at least, right, in order to run things properly. So that means I have to have, like, every corp has to have a minimum of 5 officers. So if this was, let me just give you the idea here. If there was just one corp, one giant corp of 200 people, they would only need probably 10 officers. And that's about it. 5 and 5 to match 100 people each, right? Or however many. I'm just making an arbitrary number, right? But it would need much less officers. I need 5 times the officers for the same amount of people, because of the amount of corps we have to make. We had to make 10 corps to fit 200 people. So that is absolute hell, and it's annoying. That's why BSO system probably works so well, because something they do that we were contemplating doing a while ago is they also set up alt accounts. They may no longer do this, but I'm pretty sure they still do, because it makes sense. They set up alt accounts to hold the FO position, and then they, you know, I'm assuming they have the login information somewhere, and then whenever it's needed, someone accesses it, but it should probably rarely be needed. And that way they don't have to have someone anchored in any particular corp at any time. They just have an account, essentially a throwaway account, just holding the position in place, so that way people can jump around and not have to worry about that. Again, very smart. It's a little risky if you don't know what you're doing, especially since you need to attach it to a different email, different thing. Otherwise, you run the risk of linking 2 accounts to the same email, and then Google thinking that or whatever, Apple thinking that you're trying to sign into the other account, and then if you press yes, then you could lose all your account information and lose access to it. So it's a little sketchy. Sorry, I'm just trying to handle something here. Yes. And then, okay, so we went through that. People are going to leave. Wow, I really went out of, like, complete tangent there, but whatever. Yes, culture, delegation, corp management structure. I went over that. Corp size. Okay, so yes, this is an important point. So essentially, because of the way the system is currently set up, you have to do white stars, even though I think a corporation is more than just doing white stars. It seems that's the only way to earn relics, which is unfortunate, because that means that every single freaking corporation needs to do white stars in order to level up. I still think there should be different ways to level up regarding that aspect. You should be able maybe to generate relics depending on how much you talk in the corp, how active it is, how many people are helping. And they could even have a points counter or something for red stars if they wanted to keep track of how much the corp was producing, and then, like, they could have it set up similar to the RS event. Hell, they could probably even just take the point system just straight from the RS event and put it into the corp, and depending on how high the level of the run is, you get so many relics for each amount of corp. Anyway, they could come up with a million ways how to do this, but there's only one way at the moment to do it, and that's unfortunate, because not everyone is interested in white stars. It can be very taxing on a lot of people, especially the commanders, because it's a 5-day commitment. And the high-level stuff is just brutal. It's very intense. And if you want to win a lot of times, especially if you're doing 15 versus 15, which everyone obsesses over, it seems like you're just going to need a lot of... you're going to need a lot of freaking endurance for that. And you're going to find you need a lot of good people for that to make it work. The main reason why you want this is because of the flagship level and the corp bonuses at this point. More so the corp bonuses than anything else, because not only does that determine if players come to your corp to do red star so that they can get arts with a bonus, it also determines if your members get a certain percentage. I personally hate this thing. I really wish they never came out with the bonuses, because it's made, like, building a specialized corp a living nightmare. Like, you just can't do it. People are going to want to go to certain corps to do the red stars because they get the higher bonuses, which means that just turned it into absolute hell. It takes forever to level up, and then there's a gap, so that doesn't help. So yes, unfortunately, you will need to do white stars, just FYI, because otherwise you can't level up to Corp. Oh, and the other thing is Corp slot members. That's the other reason you want to level up, because you want more slots, as many as you can fit in there. I talked about delegation a little bit. You want to make sure if there's something you hate doing, just assign it to somebody else who's willing to do it or better at it than you are, and things will go a lot smoother. And just keep an eye on that. Thing with the delegation is it's great when you do it. Just make sure the only responsibility with delegation is making sure the people are actually doing their job. That's the only thing you need to make sure you keep track of. Not to say that you should distrust everybody, right? You just keep your eye, on the ball and make sure that everything's going right. And if they're just not doing it for whatever reason, reach out. Say, hey, what's up? What's going on? You haven't been doing this. I want to know. Do whatever tone you wish. Trading arts, yeah, you really need a high level corp for that. If you're listening to this and you're just starting to build a corp, the likelihood that you get to this point is probably way, 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 way out of, not even close to reachable at this point, because most of the people will want to go to the high level corps, and almost nobody goes to brand new corps because they don't have the bonuses. Oh yes, so some things you'll run into. I'm looking through my notes. Progression and RS gaps. There's a lot of pressures on a corp. So here they are. There's 5 main ones. There's the white star interest gap, because you need to run white stars. There's the activity gap. There's the tech gap. There's the red star level gap. And there's the, did I say activity gap? So let's say white stars, activity, RS, RS tech. Wait, hold on, let's see. There's 5. What am I forgetting? So let's say RS, white star, tech gap, progression gap. I guess that kind of goes into the red star thing. And activity. I think that's the last one. I don't know. I think I said 5. Whatever. I can't freaking hold 5 things in my head. Let me just note them down. White star, RS. Oh my god, I'm so freaking scatterbrained. Activity, progression, and tech. Is that everything? You can kind of put the 2 together. I feel like I'm forgetting one, but I guess this is 5. Yeah, so tech, progression, activity, RS, and white star interest. So the main thing with white star is, people are they actually interested in doing white stars. You'll find that some people are not interested at all, and some people are really interested, and this produces so much freaking drama. Oh my god, you will never see so much destruction happen outside of white star drama. White stars produce so much drama. It's insane. There's red star progression. Yeah, so basically people being left in different levels and making sure that they're as close-knit as possible. That's why when we build the corp, I don't recommend people mixing so much, drastically different levels, because it just doesn't work very well, unfortunately, especially if people are looking for people to run with and they're not that good at the level they're currently at. You just need to keep people as close as possible, in my opinion. That's what we try to do in UIH, or have a fluid system like BSO, and it doesn't really matter at that point. Just realize it might be a lot more difficult and requires a lot more skill to run a corporation like that. And willing participants, as they say. Okay, so the activity, yes, there's activity gaps. Something to keep in mind is people should be doing something. Something we ran into is some people would just be doing diddly squat. And that's not okay. So you should have it in your corporation policy somewhere that you should contribute in some fashion, whether it's socializing. Like, you can make it as simple as socializing, freaking helping someone in a red star, giving tips and advice, anything to contribute, right? Because if they're not doing anything, they're not active, they might as well not be in the corp. It doesn't make any sense. And corps, if I haven't mentioned this already, are like 80%, 75-80% of the experience, in my opinion. So that's why it's very important that people just participate, because otherwise, what's the point? Progression, that's again the same thing. If you have people at different levels, parts of the game, it gets really messy. You want to get them as close as humanly possible. But as you go higher in levels, you'll notice that the gaps in time it takes to get to the next red star level starts to get drastically higher, especially when you get beyond 8 and 9, I think. It starts to get ridiculously long. So keep that in mind for later. There's also the tech gaps. This matters more, especially when you're doing white stars and red stars, because if someone doesn't have a particular piece of tech, it can jeopardize the team, and it can make things a lot more difficult in red stars. So keep that in mind. Again, the biggest way to avoid that hurdle is to educate people as much as possible on the different things of the game, and just kind of make sure they understand that this is all very important. Yeah, hell, you can even have them watch this or listen to this podcast. So there you go. I'm just reading another note here. Oh, yes, these were some points from Reddit. That's a really good point. I'll go over these now since I've pretty much covered everything. If you want to build a megacorp, just keep that structure in mind, the 5-to-1. Essentially, all you need to do to build a megacorp is repeat the same formula I just laid out to you. You build it, you get a new corp, and if you have officers already, it makes it much easier. Get a bunch of people, sift through the garbage. Keep the good ones, make sure they're well, taken care of. Get your new leadership from there. If you can't find a leader from there, assign one from a different corp that's willing. Usually it'll be someone who already has an ult and is willing to deal with it. What else? Yeah, actually, there's not much more to it. If you find your officers from there, assign them and get them to run the corp, and coordinate with them. Again, if you're a leader, part of your main responsibility is, if you're leading people, is just to check up on things, make sure things are running, and to direct things if things are not going well. If you're also the person people will go to if they're having a problem, because ideally you should know what you're doing already, and you should be able to give them an idea of what direction to head into. And do realize, again, people will drop out the higher the level of the post. Like, for example, if you lose a CO or something, not to say that, whatever, if that's the highest post you got, or the next highest post, it's drastically harder to find a replacement for that. So just take care of those people when you have them, because it's a lot harder to find replacements for those types of posts than it is to find for just a general member, for example, because those guys are capable of running things, and even if you find somebody, they may not be able to run things as well. So just an FYI. But now I'm going to go over some points that were made on Reddit like months ago. My God, I'm so sorry it's taking me so long to get to this. But oh geez, I don't remember the context here. So it says in activity, close friends get up and leave, and how hard it is to kick people. Oh, okay, so that's what it was. Yeah, so yeah, getting used to kicking people. I understand it was really hard at the beginning to do that. It feels bad, but unfortunately it's for the greater good. If they're not willing to put any effort into the game, or it's some situation where they're like, oh well, I can't because I'm studying, I'm doing this. I mean, the best thing is just to tell them, hey, lay it out straight for them, and tell them, hey, if you can't do this, unfortunately, this is not going to work. It's just like a relationship, right? You just gotta, put that from the very beginning, make that a point to really let people know that this is what's expected. And if they can't fulfill that, then they can always come back or whatever. Yeah, and then it says here, people make close friends, and then they just get up and leave. Yep, people are going to leave. Unfortunately, it's going to happen. You're going to have to find new friendships. I'm sorry. That's just part of the game. Yes, so the other thing is Discord bots. So you don't really need a whole lot of Discord bots. You can make your own custom one at some point if you find a crazy coder. I found Growly. He's amazing. But you can use like Dino and Yag. Those are the main ones that most people use. There's probably some oddball bots. I use StatBot or something. I guess that's some other point that you should keep in mind, that you want to keep track of statistics. Generally, if things are going in the right direction, they're going up. Membership is going up, conversation, interactions, how much people are staying on the server. If that's all going up, you're doing a good thing. If it's going down, that means you're not doing as well. And here's a stable point of reference. There's nothing in this universe that stays level. There's no such thing. So you're either going up or you're going down. And the only stable point is going up slightly. So if you're always going up, then you're good. If you're going down, find a way to reverse that, because that doesn't stay. Eventually it tends to go steeply down. That happened the first time I left. Things were okay when I left, and they kind of got a little worse, and then they got substantially worse, and a bunch of corps were created, and it just turned into a mess. So Not to blame the guy who had it. You know, he did a good job. He tried to do his best, you know, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to manage a corp like UIH and BSO, for example. It's no easy task. The more help you can get, at some point you can even almost kind of take your hands away from the wheel, because a lot of the work gets done by people who are there. Just make sure you assign posts and have people responsible for the things. And something to keep in mind is do not bypass these people. I want to make that very clear. If someone comes to you for something that someone else is in charge of, send them that way. Unless it's an emergency, and even if it's if it's an emergency, handle it, but then let the person know who's in charge that that's been done, because you don't want to bypass people. Because what's going to happen, and this is what I've seen, if you bypass people, you're going to end up inheriting that job, and you're going to now be the one who everyone goes to get that done. So rather than delegating the work, now you just find yourself getting the job back. So just make sure to not bypass the people unless there's an emergency of some kind. And if there's an emergency, you get together with the person, see what happened, and get that thing handled, so that way it doesn't repeat itself in the future. Okay, so Discord bots. Yeah, so there's one point here that was made on Reddit ages ago. It said, aside from social interactions, there's no incentive to be in the corp. Other corps will generally accept guests for white stars and red stars, like for example, like collectives combining corps. Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with that. Unfortunately, that is a thing, but there is some incentives you can create, right? I mean, unfortunately, people are going to always leave, but you can get them invested in the corp, right? Especially if they're like officers and stuff. But if it's members, more than likely, yeah, you'll have people leave, because I've had it happen. They want to find a corporation who's more dedicated to white stars, doing this. And then again, it depends what your purpose is, right? You might have an easier time. We're more like we have all the things under our umbrella kind of thing. And if you're more specific, you might have an easier time with this. But it is a problem that you're eventually going to face. But if you create a good culture, a good environment, people have nice laughs. I mean, like for example, people go to what was that corp? Something Dads. I forget what the name of the corpse is. Epic Dads. I forget what the name of the corp. It's a high level corp. I forget the name. Something to do with dads, and just a bunch of people are there, and they're like all adults, and they have, you know, a certain type of humor and interaction in the corp servers and that kind of thing. And, you know, that created its own culture. And I had members visiting all the time over there because they were interesting. I don't think I had anybody leave for them particularly, but there was definitely members moving over there to just chat and do whatever. So you will see that. But I still think that you can create incentives to stay in the corp. It's just a little bit tricky because obviously it's almost like a consumer, right? You're a business, and everyone's kind of looking for the best deal or the best thing that they can get for their money, or their time in this case, right? So if they find that the value is higher somewhere else, they just might go there. It doesn't take a whole lot to leave, right? You don't have to, you know, hire a moving truck and all this thing. It's relatively easy. You don't have to spend a whole lot to get there. So yeah, I mean, there's many ways you can get creative with this. How to make it. To create a really cool social environment. And again, having traffic in your server is always a good thing. Just make sure that you level up your moderators to the degree that you get new people. You know, if you get 1,000 new people, you want to have more moderators. But yeah, those were the 3 tips or the 3 points that were brought up on Discord. I'm sorry, on Reddit. So I hope I covered those sufficiently. As for now, for the things that I don't like about the current system of the corpse and everything. So this is just going to be a rant. If you don't really want to listen to this, then you can go ahead and, you know, take the value I just gave you. Hopefully it works for you. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments and move on. But here's the reason why there's some shortfalls with the corpse. So everyone complains about BSO, and everyone complains about, oh my God, they're cheating, playing the system. Unfortunately, this is the way the system was designed. The way BSO is designed and built is essentially built based on what the system allows, based on what the system actually is willing to take in. And, you know, this is the most optimized way you can set it up, unfortunately, right? And most people just can't set up a corp like this because it takes a lot of time. BSO is older than UIH. It's a lot older than UIH. I think it's probably one of the first corps that was ever built, if I had to guess. So they're an old corp. They've been around a while. And it's tough. I mean, building a corp like that is not easy, but they've been doing it for years. So as you can see, I mean, that's clearly paid off. And the reason, like, one of the reasons I think Andreas had pointed out for this particular system was because he didn't want people, like, ganging up on, like, you know, the small slots in the corps. He didn't want people just going into into one corp and just having an elitist kind of environment. But that's what ended up happening anyway, because these guys just made more space by creating more corps and making all that space essentially one big corp. UIH is different in the sense where we try to make all the corps their own kind of little units, but BSO makes it a one gigantic group. So, you know, when they add more corps, they just add more slots so they can have people moving around. So that's a problem. I hate that. I think it's stupid that the corp slots are so small. I think it's small thinking. That's why they're so limiting. It's only like, what, 25, 30, 40 if you're maxed out, I think. It's just not enough slots. I'd have a minimum of 100, a maximum of 200. I think Broly in our last podcast was talking about having it be like an alliance system where you just have corps kind of unite and they have a common interface and that kind of thing. And you know, that's a great idea. I think that's cool. I think a combination of the two would be really awesome. Maybe we can compromise. Maybe make each one a 50 slotter or 100 slotter, and then add alliances where you can expand it from there. I think that's a really cool idea. But, you know, yeah, mileage may vary. I hate that. It punishes people if you're like it particularly punishes people who want to help new players. It's not to say that like you can't build a corp with new players, because obviously you can. It's just like one of my biggest purposes for the corp was to, you know, have a bunch of new players and just help them and really, like, you know, make a really good experience for people who are coming into the game, because I love this game so much. Personally, I've had such a great experience. It was such a revolutionary thing when I first bumped into it. I was so happy. I had finally found a game that wasn't a horrible grind, horrible anxiety-inducing pass pool or whatever, puss pool, because it's just, oh my god, it's so de-stressing not having to worry about your system and people invading and raiding and whatever, stealing your resources. So that was revolutionary when I first bumped into it. But again, I can't keep doing it because the corp sizes are so small. I mean, ideally, I'm a crazy person. I would have like 5, 10, 200 corp, a 200 member corps, and just build a crap load of them and just help a ton of players out. That would be my whole thing, right? Helping as many people as I possibly can to get into the game. And if Andreas does this, I would commit to that. I would commit to, I don't know if I'd make 10 of them, but I'd make at least 3 of them, I think. Set up 3. I think I would find a system for it. Maybe more. I would go after that. It just depends how much time I have. I mean, I'm doing so many same things. But, you know, in UIH, we have plenty of officers, so we could probably find some willing hands to help do that nowadays instead of me starting from scratch, right? But, or maybe I'll start one corp from scratch and make a tutorial out of it. I don't know. But yeah, there's just so much that that limits that one little metric. It limits so many things. And again, if you want to limit the elitist kind of thing, it doesn't really help, because they just end up making more corps, and then just all those people end up there anyway. I mean, the majority of high-level players, I want to say, end up in BSO or collective. You know, these big corps are known everywhere, and all the big players, you know, all the high-end and elder people like me, they know these guys, so they will go there. So, you know, that's my main thing. Other than that, I hate the White Star system, the way it's set up with the relics. Oh my god. Need to find a better way to find relics for that. It's just too limiting. A corp is more than just white stars. It adds so much stress when it's just that. Find other ways that you can do that. That would be cool if Andreas is, if you're listening to this, you know, that's just my opinion. And I think that's really it. Yeah, I mean, if they just change the sizes, that's the only thing I really care about. Everything else is more or less fine as it is. The sizes and the relic thing, that's the only thing I really dislike with the system. Everything else is pretty much fine. It's just, again, it's just too limiting. It makes it stressful for people who want to build corporations, because it compresses everything. There are so many problems this creates. It compresses how many people. Like, for example, if I had a 200 member corp, I could have like a roster of 200 members essentially. And that's something that Broly was talking about with the alliance stuff. He wanted to have like a shared roster from all the corps, and that way you could just have a big pool of people you can choose from, rather than just one small 25 to 40 member corp. And, you know, you could, I don't know, you can increase the amount of white star slots you have. Maybe you can do like 4 of them at one time at maximum instead of just 2. And you would have a much bigger pool. So, I mean, with 200, the percentage of people that would be needed for that, of the corp count, assuming you have it full, you know, let's do some math here. 200 divided by 15. That would be 13.3% of the corp. That's very small compared to, like, let's say if it was 40, which isn't what you would start with, by the way. It would be closer to 30, I think. That would be... Wait, hold on. I'm doing some math wrong here. It's like half the corp. Yeah, it's like 2.6, so it's a little over half the corp. So yeah, I mean, it's just too much. If you're doing like 15 versus 15, realistically, you're never going to do 2 slots of 15 unless it's a hardcore White Star Corp. So increasing the slots would solve that problem. Instead of being half the corp, it would be like a 13th of the corp. You can incorporate a lot more. You can use a lot more flexibility. It alleviates a lot of administration problems. Oh my God. I would have 10 or 15 officers at most instead of 50. Anyway, that's my rant on that end of things. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's about an hour long, so I'm just going to cut it here. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, any thoughts or concerns or, whatever. And I hope I catch you on the next podcast in the future. We'll see what that one brings in. Alrighty. Have a good one, guys. Bye.